Hello. Okay, let's get into it. So, I've now read the second part of the first Mistborn book, which ends with, I believe, chapter 15. Um, and I'm still really enjoying the book. Uh, and I have a lot of thoughts, actually. I think this book is going in some interesting directions in many respects. Um, as usual, full spoilers up to the chapters in the video title. Um, so yeah, let's go. Uh, so, uh, this book is definitely exploring some more consistently exploring more themes than Elantris did. Elantris had, in my opinion, a bit of a problem, which is that it didn't really have any major themes by the end. I can't really look back on Elantris and say, oh, this is what this story was about. Um, Mistborn already feels like that's not the case. It is very focused on multiple themes. There are themes of religion, which I'll get to. There are themes of loyalty and betrayal, which I'll also get to. Um, Themes of found family, themes of oppression and fighting back against it. Um, these are not particularly complex themes, but uh, they work, especially when there's so many of them at the same time. They provide a rich thematic tapestry for the book to draw from, and I enjoy that. It makes the story feel more vibrant um, and alive than Elantris did at times. There were times, as much as I enjoyed some parts of it, there were other parts of Elantris that felt like just a recitation of events with with not necessarily any meaning ascribed to them, and that just isn't as fun to read. Um, so yeah, Vin and Kelsey are still enjoyable characters. Um, One thing I find very interesting about Vin, and potentially somewhat troubling if the trend continues into future books, um, Vin and Serene from Elantris have something in common, which is that while they are very, very well executed and complex and good female protagonists, they do sort of fall into the exceptional woman trope. Um, they are female protagonists, but they are separate from other women and female characters. Um, Really, so far, Mistborn doesn't have any female characters, really, other than Vin. Um, the whole, both her old crew, who are all dead now, and the new crew under Kelsier, are, both crews are 100% all male. Um, every major character we've seen so far is male, apart from Vin herself. It's even really it's more pronounced than it was in Elantris. In Elantris, at least there were other women around Serene all the time that she was interacting with, even if they weren't particularly developed characters. But here in Mistborn, it's really only Vin constantly surrounded by men. Um, and you can do some interesting stuff with that, but I don't know. It kind of feels at this point like Sanderson is just a big fan of the whole exceptional woman thing. I hope that doesn't continue into future Cosmere books, especially seeing as Sanderson is seen as like a disciple of Robert Jordan, and for all the many, many, many flaws with the ways Robert Jordan wrote gender. A lack of female characters was never one of them. The majority of characters in Wheel of Time are women. Um, so I'm hoping, uh, I'm hoping Sanderson maybe adds some more women sometimes. Um, but that's all I'll say about that for now, because I'm still very early on in the Cosmere, and this could get completely different by the end. Um, on a more positive note, when it comes to the political elements of the Cosmere, um, the religious themes in this book are already way more developed than I ever felt they were in the in Elantris. Um, Elantris was technically a story about religion in some ways, but and it went into theology in interesting ways, which I liked and I praised at the time as, like, an interesting departure from how fantasy usually deals with religion, which is not with a lot of nuance. Um, but I feel like this story is sort of gearing up to actually, like, be about religion in a more compelling way. Um, in part because the main antagonist of the story is kind of like a messiah figure. Um, and also through Sazed. Sazed is clearly going to be a very important character going forward, and especially after that last chapter and some of the implications of it, um, where he apparently has some kind of that's my phone, sorry, where he apparently has some kind of special powers. Um, anyway, yeah, Sazed is clearly going to be a major character, and he is kind of this weird omni priest. He's like a priest of every religion, kind of. Which is a really interesting concept. I really like that idea for a character, like a character who learns about and basically practices every religion he's ever heard of at once. And he's like, yeah, some of them are contradictory, but that doesn't stop me. I think that's cool. I really like that. There's some potential there if Sanderson is willing to actually explore that more. Um, and more importantly, of course, is that the Final Empire itself is a theocracy. Um, in a very interesting way, actually. So the story of Mistborn, um, the real world story, I mean, is that Sanderson wanted to tell a fantasy story in which the Dark Lord already won. Like, essentially, his idea was that, the usual fantasy story of defending the world from the Dark Lord had already happened 1,000 years ago, and the good guys lost, and now we're living in the Dark Lord's world. But what I think is really interesting is that it's not just any typical fantasy story that happened 1,000 years ago when the Dark Lord won. It's Elantris. I'm not saying that Mistborn is like a secret sequel to Elantris where it's actually taking place in the same world. Like, no, I'm not doing some kind of stupid theory crafting here. No, what I actually mean is that while Mistborn is a completely different world, it specifically provides a window into what I imagine a world in which Fjorden 1 would look like. Because there are a lot of parallels. Both Fjorden and the Final Empire are explicitly theocratic. Both are led by singular charismatic leaders who are perceived to be the embodiments of the Empire's god, so Wyrn and the Lord Ruler. Um, so I think and both have like a strictly hierarchical caste system within them that's also based on a very bureaucratized clergy. Like the Fjordish priests um, are very bureaucratic in structure, and so is the, I believe it's called the Steel Ministry in the Final Empire. Uh, so yeah, I feel like there's a lot of similarities there actually between Elantris and Mistborn in that respect, which I find interesting. I think that's some people would call that unoriginal. I find it very compelling. I think it's essentially a case of Sanderson going back to his previous work and exploring the same subjects or the same ideas in a very different way, and I like that. So let me see here in my notes. That's it for my talk about the parts I've read so far. But I do have some interesting predictions for the future. This book is making me think a lot about what's going to happen next. So first of all, a minor point. We've now been introduced to the 8 basic elementic metals, and we've also been introduced to the 10th metal, but we have not been introduced to the 9th metal. There's a gap there, and I think it's fairly obvious that the 9th metal is probably whatever Lord Renew is using to change his appearance and masquerade as the real Lord Renew. Renew? How do you say that? Yeah. So yeah, I'll be fairly surprised if the 9th metal doesn't turn out to be that. Secondly, we're definitely going to find out how Steel Inquisitors are created, and I think we're going to find out through one of the major characters getting turned into one. I'm guessing that Steel Inquisitors are created from either Mistings or Mistborn. Seemingly Mistborn, because the one that Vin fought was clearly a Mistborn, like using all the metals. So I'm guessing that some Mistborn character is going to get turned into one. Presumably not Vin. That would be a dark turn for this series. Maybe Kelsier eventually in like one of the later books, maybe. Or maybe a new character we haven't met yet. Maybe Lord Elend Venture is actually a Mistborn. We don't actually know. Like, there's clearly something about him beyond the fact Vin just has a crush on him, which I do find cute. Even if it might devolve into an annoying plotline if it gets too melodramatic. I'm hoping it doesn't go in like a totally soap opera direction with Vin and Elend. So what other predictions do I have? Yeah, metal mines, which is apparently a thing that the terracemen have, or at least the keepers, like Sazed. I'm predicting that's going to be like a separate but somewhat related system of magic. Like how in Elantris it was implied but never actually shown that that there are other systems for accessing the door other than Aeon Door. But those other systems are all still tapping into the same power source, which is the door. So metal mines, just based on the name, I'm guessing there's a system that's not allomancy, but that is still ultimately using metal to access magical abilities. So just like the door was the source of magic on what was the name of the planet? I've forgotten the name of the planet in in Elantris. Whatever. So I imagine that metal is just the main source of power on this planet, which I don't think we have a name for yet. And finally, I'm going to make a very bold prediction that is almost certainly not going to come true. But if it does, I'm going to be very proud of myself for predicting it. So, first of all, the not very bold part. By the end of this book, someone will betray the group. That's obvious because clearly betrayal is a major theme in the story. Kelsier was betrayed by someone when he was sent to the pits of Hathsin. Maybe his wife. I feel like there's an implication that it was his wife. Vin was betrayed by her brother, who also taught her to always expect betrayal. Kaimon. The story starts with Kaimon betraying his partner. Vin is constantly thinking about whether she can trust Kelsier and stuff like that. Clearly, the issue of betrayal and loyalty is key to the themes of this book. So it's pretty much inevitable that by the end of this book, someone is going to betray someone. Also, they have to fail in this book because there's 2 more books, and if they just beat the Lord Ruler in this book, that's not gonna make for a very interesting sequel. So I'm guessing that this book ends with the plot falling apart because someone betrayed them. That's not my hot take. That's not my controversial wild guess here. My wild guess is that the person who is going to betray them is Vin herself. My guess is that probably through a combination of her relationship with Elend, her slight distrust of Kelsier, Kelsier's unwillingness to share information with her. Through some mixture of these things, Vin is going to probably, in my prediction, end up betraying the crew, and that's why the plot is going to fail. If I'm right, I'll be very happy, both because I'll be proud for being right, but also because I think it's a very interesting direction to take the story, to have the actual main character of the story betray the other characters rather than have one of the side characters betray the main character, which is usually how this works. I could be wrong, but that's the vibe somehow that I'm getting. Like I feel like Vin's loyalty to the crew is not being just constantly reinforced, but also constantly presented with challenges so far. And I think that's going to keep happening, and I think she's going to end up making the wrong choice at the end of this book. Based probably on what her brother taught her, because her brother taught her to not trust people and not be loyal to people. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for my thoughts on this part of the book. I am very excited. I'm very excited for the rest of this book. See ya.